The very existence of humanity is flawed. From the moment you're born, your advantages in this world are determined by genetics, race, social status, and other factors beyond your control. This is true even since the dawn of man. Prehistoric society existed without formal hierarchies, which some anthropologists have described as being similar to anarchism. A man could easily kill another man if they were stronger or bigger. It's this primordial instinct for the human to survive. Eventually, humans built civilizations, and with these civilizations came the need for a governing body to prevent coercion from this anarchism. No longer should it be that the strongest one shall be the only one that survives. From the Mesopotamian civilization came the Code of Ur-Nammu, which is the oldest known surviving law code, to our knowledge. Presenting himself as the father of his people, Ur-Nammu encouraged his subjects to think of themselves as one family and of his laws as the rules of a home. Ur-Nammu established the code based on the belief that his people already understood how to treat one another with respect and that imposing fines for violations would reinforce this behavior. It contained rules such as if a man commits a murder, that man must be killed, or if a man commits a robbery, he will be killed, which I guess, yeah, kind of self-explanatory, but if you really think about it, do they really deserve to be killed? But I don't know, that's them. They were crazy. Humans were crazy at first. Yeah. I'm not gonna be talking about every rule since it's not really important for this video, but for the purposes of education, here, I'm gonna flash them on screen. Fast forward several thousands of years, like ask a 6-year-old kid what the biggest number they can think of is, and that's probably how many years had passed. Humanity developed philosophical ideas of a social contract. Although similar ideas can be traced back to the Greek sophists, social contract theories were most explored in the 17th and 18th centuries and are most famously associated with the English philosophers Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, and the French philosopher, apologize my pronunciation, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Despite its numerous interpretations, at its core, the social contract is the idea of a member of a state being obligated to give up some freedom in exchange for the protection of oneself and for others. Thus, the moral obligation to abide by laws. You give up complete liberty in exchange for protection from others, and yeah, that's it, if that makes sense. Even in a contemporary setting, this philosophy still seems to hold true. So, what does all of this mean? I think the main point is this. Laws are the manifestation of humanity to protect us from ourselves, thus its need. With the evolution and development of humanity came the evolution and development of the laws and the legal system. The point here is simple. We have thankfully come to a point in time where following a certain moral code set forth for the best interests of the state and by the best interests of the state is what is normal, and it is what is to be expected of us. You could say that it's the mundane. With all that being said, it's no wonder that crime is so sensationalized. This idea of breaking out of the mundane, we just love it, man. The very act of committing a crime instills and triggers something deep within humans. There's something deeply voyeuristic about crime films because we watch from a safe distance, from our screens, thrilled by what we dare not do ourselves. It's not just excitement, it's a sort of catharsis. This is why, even though we generally know that crime is bad, watching someone rob a bank, guns a-blazing, with their masks on, it still gives us a sort of excitement. And I can prove this. The biggest pieces of media tend to sensationalize crime. Like, take The Godfather for example, often regarded as the greatest movie of all time. It centers itself around a mafia family. Breaking Bad, often regarded as the greatest TV show of all time, it turns drug dealing into a dramatic transformation. At its core, the modern crime film, in all its grandeur, has inadvertently shifted our perspective on what is something out of the mundane, even though even the simplest crime, like stealing a piece of candy, is supposedly inherently breaking out of the mundane. But no, in order to do this, it has to be gangs, it has to be guns, it has to be meticulously planned out assassinations. That is breaking out of the mundane, not stealing a piece of candy. Of course, not to say that this is necessarily bad. Like, I love The Godfather, I love Breaking Bad, those are both important pieces of media. But the point is that this is what is to be expected. After all, the main goal of a movie or a TV show in our capitalist society is to make money, and to do that, you need a hook. You need something eye-catching. And so the media we've built sets the standards for what kinds of crimes are marketable, and therefore, what becomes a spectacle. Over time, this trend has reshaped how we see crime, not as desperation or breakdown, but as power, as style, and as rebellion. We see crime as cool, rebellious, and even sometimes sexy. We forget that most crimes don't happen with slow motion walks and pimped up models. I'd argue that they happen most prominently on empty streets, between hungry families, and with no music playing in the background. This is where Vittorio De Sica's 1948 film, Bicycle Thieves, or its original title, Ladri de Bicyclette, plays an absolutely important role. The plot is simple. Antonio Ricci desperately needs a job in post-World War II Italy to support his wife Maria and his son Bruno. For context, after the war, Italy had a devastated economy, a divided society, and widespread anger towards the monarchy. The country experienced significant industrial and agricultural destruction, rising unemployment, a collapsed currency, and increased cost of living. So you can imagine what that's like. Going back, by some luck, Antonio is offered a job to advertise bills. But to do this, he requires a bicycle which he doesn't have. He reluctantly accepts. Hearing this, Maria takes her dowry sheets and trades them for a bicycle in the pawn shop, which they can barely afford. On the first day of the job, while Antonio was on a ladder, the bicycle was stolen by a young man.
Al ladro! Al ladro! Che ti è successo?
This is the crime of the movie that sends our main character down a spiral. There's no big bank heist, no murders or explosions, no lies or deception. It's just a man stealing a bike. What follows is Antonio and the young Bruno desperately searching for the thief. I'm not going to focus on this part of the film, but know that there are many implications of societal problems and all. Just watch the movie, it's amazing. Eventually, Antonio spots the thief and chases him into a brothel where everyone ejects them. In the street, hostile neighbors gather as Antonio accuses the thief, but the crowd instead becomes hostile towards Antonio. Bruno calls a policeman, who searches the thief's apartment without success. The policeman tells Antonio that the case is weak. Antonio has no witnesses, and the neighbors are certain to provide the thief with an alibi. Hearing this, Antonio and Bruno leave in despair. On their way home, Antonio spots an unattended bike. He instructs Bruno to wait as he hesitantly approaches the bike. He then gets on it and tries to get away. But he's instantly chased by a crowd of people. He gets caught and the police escort him towards the station. But the owner, seeing Bruno cry, tells the police to release him. Antonio and Bruno slowly walk off amidst a sea of people, Antonio holding back tears. Again, like I said, there is so much more to this movie that I won't be covering in this video. With that said, I'll be talking about two main things: what the mundane act of a bicycle theft means, and secondly, what we ought to prioritize as humans moving forward. We've already established that to follow laws is what is expected of us. So, what even drives one to commit a crime in the first place? You may say things such as anger. One kills another because of jealousy or out of anger. You may even say for the thrill of breaking out of the mundane, as I've said, to experience a high. But even given all of these, I'd like to argue that the biggest and most important driving force for a crime is one's social status, one's upbringing, one's social environment. Addicts exist because they grow up being surrounded by people who are stressed and hungry and in need of a quick and easy way to escape that. Terrorists exist because their entire upbringing has led them to feel the need to radically fight back against the system that has oppressed them. Thieves exist because they are surrounded by people who need to steal to survive. Antonio only stole that bike because he needed it for his job and to get karmic retribution for the things inflicted onto him. The young man probably needed that bike too, which is why he stole it from Antonio in the first place. It's a cyclic problem of karmic retribution and necessity, all being inflicted upon by a system that constantly oppresses. Bicycle Thieves shows a mundane yet realistic depiction of crime. It doesn't show a once-in-a-lifetime bank heist. It shows something so simple that happens every day, yet it affects the lives of millions stuck in systematic poverty, and it's just really unfortunate that we don't see crime painted this way that much anymore. It's easy to feel empathy towards Antonio, like it really is. He's a hard-working father who had one big slip-up. But this is the reality of most criminals. It's safe to assume, and I personally like to assume, that most people don't want to commit a crime, but that most people have a good moral code. And yet, millions fall into this downward spiral. There are probably millions like Antonio. Because after the movie ends, Antonio would arrive home, and then what? His family would go hungry, he sees his wife, his kid going hungry. It would become easier every day just to steal a bicycle. It would become easier every day just to commit a crime to save the people that he loves. This to me is the true message of Bicycle Thieves. Crime is something that is enforced in a human's instinct to survive in a harsh environment. Antonio did not want to steal the bike, but the harsh world led him to try it. Does this completely justify crime? Absolutely not. Objectively, these laws ought to exist and be enforced. Does it show the inherent social problems present in all societies? Absolutely. Empathy doesn't mean excusing wrongdoing. It means understanding the underlying conditions that create it. And that's what this movie is trying to tell us. That's what we have to learn and take away from this film. This brings me to my second point on what we as humans ought to prioritize and act upon. We should not view crime solely as an individual failure, but as a reflection of larger societal problems, things that we can act upon as a society to fix. Of course, most things are gray and exist on a spectrum. Antonio may have broken the law, but he did so with the weight of desperation on his shoulders. That makes it gray. His story, like so many others, exists in this moral gray area. I call for empathy, yes, but we shouldn't forget that they are still infringing on the rights of an individual as well. That's the dark beauty of it. Bicycle Thieves doesn't offer clean black or white answers, because nothing in life really is like that. Instead, it forces the viewer to confront uncomfortable truths, that crime can be mundane, that justice is often inaccessible, and that those who break the law may also be its victims. Just really quick, some contentions I want to clarify. Again, I want to make it clear that this doesn't completely justify crime, nor does it mean that only the less fortunate are capable of committing crimes. We see rich people in power participating in corruption, Philippines. It's just that to me, if we want to solve systematic oppression, we have to understand who is most perpetuated by it. We can start from there. So, what now? Well, to start, this film came out in 1948 and is shot in black and white because apparently humans hadn't unlocked colors back then. Like, even they were seeing black and white, trust me. With that being said, I completely understand why big Hollywood blockbusters are what they are. Like me personally, I'm more likely to stick to the screen because of guns and explosions rather than a bicycle getting stolen. A film about a stolen bike in a poor neighborhood doesn't promise ticket sales or merchandise. A film with explosions, shootouts, and heists does. But that's fine. That's just how our world is sometimes. Like, even the themes of the movie are inherently not very marketable. But despite that, this movie still stands strongly, especially in today's world that centers itself around spectacle. I guess the main takeaway from this video and film is to remember that it's not just villains who commit crimes. It's mostly fathers, mothers, workers, just trying to live day by day. The true meaning of Bicycle Thieves is to show that crime isn't done out of pure evil, even though it does seem like it is, but is also influenced by the flaws of society. I hope that by understanding this, we create a less vindictive world, a world built on empathy and critical thinking. If you want tangible impacts, if we do think like this, there could be criminal justice reform wherein policies may shift toward rehabilitation instead of purely punishment, or sparking more public dialogue around the roots of crimes, reducing the us versus them mindset. All of that is to say, let's start paying attention to the mundane, because that's where the problems affecting the majority of people usually lie.